Okay. Got
Okay.
it.
Let's start off with name. So intro. You don't have to
Yeah.
if you don't want to.
Yeah. I'm Maritza Cruz, and I'm a filmmaker at USC right now, focusing mostly on writing, directing, and production design.
This is a really good introduction. My name's and I am starting this podcast. And it is called The Creative Act Podcast, and it's all about people who do things differently, and it's mostly centered on entrepreneurs and artists, and sometimes the configuration of the two. And that's it. So yeah, I guess my first question is, and but I was thinking about this. I was like, how did you know film? Like, what was your first gravitation towards film specifically? Can you remember like a memory, like childhood memory or anything like that that kind of brought you to the point of like, ah, this is what I'm going to pursue my time and energy into, and reach.
Right. Yeah. The way that I came across film was kind of an interesting way. I originally was a journalism major in undergrad, and I really always wanted to be a writer primarily, even growing up, like I was a huge fan of, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, those kind of big fantasy, like high fantasy kind of films. And but I never really saw like people like, Latinos or people like us, people of color represented in those kinds of like worlds. And I always kind of like wanted to see that, I wanted to feel like that we were a part of like and could also be like these great protagonists and have these magical powers and like save the world and all of these things, right? And so I used to write short stories actually when I was a kid.
So cool.
About like these kinds of things. I was a big fanfic writer too, like back in the day when it was like such a like hot thing on Tumblr. I don't know if you remember like the
I
Tumblr days.
remember. I remember that. I remember. Unfortunately, I do be remembering that.
Yeah, so I think film kind of came to me through writing in a way, because I feel like I was always a writer first.
Mhm.
And then, when I was going into undergrad, I did kind of have this itch to be like a writer and do creative writing, but I was like 18 at the time, you know, insecure, scared going into like this new place. And so I was like, I can't do that. I need to do something more practical. So what is more like the practical version of writing? Oh, journalism.
Mhm.
So I did journalism and graduated with that. And I still do really like have a great respect for journalists and like the work that they do. And I think it did help me become a better writer as well in the end, and a better storyteller. And so that's kind of like how I entered this film arena. Um, but it was really a combination of having like those journalism skills, particularly like photojournalism, video journalism, but also still having that itch for like storytelling and like narrative storytelling. And I couldn't shake it. So I decided after like being a year out of undergrad that I wanted to apply for a master's degree in film. I thought they probably won't let me in, but let me just give it a shot, It never hurts to try. That was my philosophy. Um and yeah, I got in, like surprisingly. I got in with a George Lucas scholarship as well. So um that's for like making like, films for diversity and stuff. So I'm really thankful that I've gotten this opportunity to explore my own voice when it comes to filmmaking. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess talk us through the process. Like, so you applied through to the MFA program, which is for viewers who don't know what exactly does that entail, I guess.
Yeah, so the MFA program that I'm in is for film and television production. So basically, it's a little bit more of like a program where you can kind of take a little bit of any classes that you want, Like the first year we have required classes. It's a 3-year program that we have to take just to kind of get a feel of all the different parts of filmmaking. So editing, sound, cinematography, directing, writing, all of those main ones. And then as you progress in the program, you kind of are able to choose which classes interest you the most. So some people will take mostly editing classes and graduate with like a specialty in that.
Mhm.
But really you can kind of customize like to your interests, which is something that appealed to me about USC for sure.
Beautiful. So, like, if you're more interested in the writing process, so that you would do more of those classes,
Mm-hmm.
like writing and directing, right? Like,
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So there's right now I feel like I've taken mostly the production design program is not super there's not that many classes to take for that at USC, but I've been taking directing classes and writing classes. I've taken like writing the feature class. And this semester I'm in writing the hour-long drama series class. So yeah, the writing classes are really probably one of my favorite parts at USC, just because the classes are much smaller and it just really feels like a community when you're like reading each other's scripts, giving each other notes, and just like trying to make each other's ideas come through and just yeah, be better for it in the end. So I really, really like the writing classes.
cool. That's cool. Yeah, I didn't know that there was like different things you can specialize in. That's good to know because it's like that's so all encompassing. So I was like, that's so broad. But like, it's good to be broad because you're more marketable, but also
Mm-hmm.
like that's overwhelming. I was just like even hearing it, I'm just like, like like it's so much information. You know what I'm saying, to process and to go through and to learn. So it's good to know
Right.
you can kind of niche it out as you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
in a bigger umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
based off your interests and stuff. Cool, cool, cool. I think I have another question. I'll ask you a practical question too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess. Okay, so then you apply and you're like, okay, I got in, and then you apply for the scholarship, or you applied and then you applied for the scholarship at the same time.
We apply for the scholarship at the same time. It's part
Okay.
of the application. I don't know if
Okay.
that's still how it works, but that's how
Yeah.
it worked when we
Uh-huh.
were all applying. It's just like an extra little like essay basically.
Segment. That's like really cool. That's a really resourceful and really cool. Okay, just that's awesome. All right. And then so you were journalism in undergrad. Where did you go to undergrad? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, I went to University of Arizona for undergrad.
All right, all right. I feel um like you and then like Erin, she went to Colorado. Like it's so funny, like two like kind of So okay, you were still in Arizona. That's
Hmm.
cool. And then okay, and then you moved out to LA.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm like trying to think. All right, that's a big leap. I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, all right, so you were at Arizona, you moved to LA, you're in this program now at USC, and you're in
Hmm.
your fourth year, third year,
Third year.
third year. Okay, you're in your third year, and then okay, cool, cool. And then I guess my other question is, so you said you were drawn to it. You were writing short stories when you were little. Um, and then you decided journalism because that was kind of like the practical aspect you felt like. Okay, well, what I guess what made you take the? I think you kind of answered this already with like wanting to see more Latinos in film and
Hmm.
protagonist roles, but I guess what made you take the leap of faith? Like is there something that you feel is like calling you towards it that you're just like this is what I need to be doing. This is my destiny. Is there something in your heart that like kind of just pulls you kind of continuously to this thing, or is it just more of like I just want to try it. Let's see what happens. I'm willing to take that risk type of
Hmm.
both.
Yeah. I do think it's kind of something that is like within your heart that you this pool that you really want. Like that's kind of like what a dream is, you know. It's like a sense of longing almost, I feel, you know, like you're just longing to do something and like create something so badly that you would like risk all of like risk it all basically to just be able to make something, you know. And I think it's a really hard like sensation to describe, but I think what kind of kept me going as well was my family has always been really supportive. So that's always been like a big driving force for me. They always, I think at times, like they knew that I could do things before I knew that I could do things, you know? Like I was very, growing up like kind of insecure, not really sure like am I smart enough? Am I creative enough? Do I have something special to say? Um but they always kind of reassured me that, I did, and I think they think I can do anything, and even sometimes I have to be reminded, by them when I start feeling that like self-doubt. Um so they've always been really supportive, and I have two little nieces. I have an older brother, so I have two nieces and a nephew. And I see them, now growing up, they're like in just about to be teenagers. But, I really would love to make things that can speak to them as well, because, like we were saying, like growing up, I feel like we didn't have that much representation on screen. Um, but the one thing that I can remember actually is Selena from the movie with J-Lo.
Okay, that one, not Selena Gomez.
Not Selena Gomez, like the Selena movie. I think that she was such a big part too, like the actual person as well, Selena Quintanilla, in my life growing up. Like when I was like 5 years old, I was listening to her like cassette tapes on my little like toddler like boom box, and putting on these performances. Like she just really spoke to me because she was like also a Mexican American girl following her dreams. You know, just going for it. And I think like whenever I'm feeling that kind of way, I always think back to that. Like there are people who have been successful for just going for it, and because they were so passionate about what they loved that they felt like they had to pursue it. And so I think that movie as well, just seeing that representation on screen. And even though as a kid, I don't know if I truly understood that J-Lo was not Selena, at that age. Once I got older, I was like, oh, it's a film, it's not real. Yeah. But, but, yeah, having that representation, I think was super important, just to see like that this is something that is possible, like a dream that's possible that, you know, um, and I think it's something that a lot of Latino people want to see more of, and hunger for, because we are like the biggest, consumers like when it comes to film and TV. So, I think I saw all of those things and was like, I think this will be worth it, for me, and hopefully, I can tell stories that will connect with enough people and make them feel seen as well. Yeah.
I'm gonna edit. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I feel that like representation, the pool, the lemon. Okay, I feel that specifically when you said it's a hard feeling to describe, but it also felt like you were kind of describing a hard feeling to ignore. And it was
Mm.
interesting as you were describing it. I don't know why the word lamentation came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's interesting that you say Selena too. So it's like a pool, but it's also kind of like this tragic pool. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like. So it's like if not only do I have this interest, but if I don't pursue it, I have a lamentation in my heart, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that like there's something missing, some piece of me that so there's like an interesting I don't know, I feel that. I know what you're saying, right? And I can definitely I don't know, not only empathize, but I can like I don't know. I understand I don't know. It's a interesting feeling. Um, but it's awesome that you were able to like I don't know, have family to support that and to
Mm-hmm.
see that in you and to like really foster and like kind of even mentor that like aspect of you to bring it out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like a lot of people families or people around them or like mentors are often afraid of the artistic expressions in people.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's uncomfortable. I mean, like, nobody, like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times when I talk to people and they're artists, like, even if they've made it, like, it's always, like, this tragic story, like, it's like, "No one supported me," like,
Yeah.
"It was crazy, they were mean to me," you know?
Yeah.
So that's great to know that, like, you came from a place of support, like, and that's possible and that they really fostered and mentored that creativity
Mhm.
in you since you were, like, little, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a big piece of that too is that, they always want I think, like, a lot of Latino parents, they want
Mhm.
the best for you, like, because they never had the chance maybe to, like, go to college, for instance. Like, I'm the first in my, family to go to college, so they are just, like, happy that I am, like, able to, like, have a dream and pursue it because it's, like, a sad reality, but yeah, a lot of, like, that older generation, our parents, like, they didn't have that opportunity because either, they didn't even know it was an option a lot of times. Like, my mom talks about, like, she didn't know that, like, college was even really a thing, like, that she could apply, and they just yeah, she was born in, like, in the 50s, so, like, yeah, in that time period, like, the 60s, 70s, like, people weren't thinking, like, "Oh, let me try and, like, as a guidance counselor, get, like, these Latino students to go to school," right?
Uh-huh.
Um, so she didn't really know it was an option, and both of my parents, like, they both had dreams that they couldn't chase because they had to just survive and, get a job, and I think that's the reality, like I said, of a lot of Latino parents, so
A lot of
yeah.
Latinos even to this day, and that's something I didn't even realize, like, until, like, I worked that, like, medical assistant job, like, I please don't sue me. But, like, I, like, didn't realize a lot of people don't even have a lot of information on, like,
Mhm,
what school is, so a lot of people are like, "College, like, how could you afford that?" Like, there's still so much lack of information and access to
mhm.
you can apply to financial aid, you realize, like, they're gonna actually cover most of your, like, situation if you are in
Yeah.
a certain poverty line, you know? Um, and I think, like, that's so funny that you say that because it does stop most people from even starting, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's the lack of information that is just not accessible to most people or just the sort of stigma of, like, people like us could never
Mhm.
who do you think you are? Like, and I think, like,
Yeah.
that's also part of the toxic, like, culture of Latinos too that I, like
Mhm.
especially prevalent in areas that aren't San Francisco or Los Angeles now that I have lived in a more rural area, like, I've realized that that mentality is very prevalent, like, it's very much like, like, this is the struggle and that's what it's going to be instead of, like, how can I think outside of the box in my situation and learn new information so that I can move forward in a direction that I didn't even think was possible, you know?
Right, yeah.
So it's
Hold
like,
on one second.
oh,
Okay, sorry. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I think, like, what you're mentioning is it's so true, and a film that comes to mind, like, that kind of explores that I rewatched actually recently, um, is Real Women Have Curves. I don't know if you're
I've
familiar, if you've seen it.
I'm gonna write that down now. Real women have curves.
Yeah, it's directed by, Patricia Cardoso?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, girl.
No, don't apologize. Real women have curves. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's kind of really dealing with that issue as well, like the older generation, like it's about a young Mexican American girl played by America
Mm-hmm.
Ferrera that she she has the opportunity to go to college, but she doesn't want like she can't because her mom is like adamant about her working at like the sewing factory that her sister owns, because they need help and they need the money,
Mm-hmm.
um and so it's kind of like that, that friction between mother and daughter, of like the mother not wanting the daughter to go away to college, but the daughter wants to start her own life
Oh.
and move to New York City, and if it sounds familiar, it's because it's basically Lady Bird, but but
Wow. That sounds beautiful. And I think, like, that really does encompass though the struggle of like seeing things differently, or being the artist, or being the wave maker or the trailblazer in any situation. It's like,
Mhm.
what are you doing? You think you're better than us? Why are you stepping away? And then it's often that push and pull, and that risk often takes no contact for a while
Mhm.
because you're like burning a bridge, and you're
Yeah.
scary. So I think like it's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that like your parents were like the non-toxic version of professionals, that they and that's I think like the goal ultimately too. Like I realize like once you start healing and you start seeing things from a different perspective, you realize like actually good, healthy people want you to struggle less.
Mhm.
They want to help move you above even what they accomplished, or they want you to have the resources they didn't have without guilting you for them.
Right.
And I think that is only something I'm learning now because I'm in like my mid 20s. So
Mhm.
now I'm like, I would never want that. Like for my niece or nephew, you mentioned, like when
Yeah.
I hear like that they have more resources or their parents are more understanding of certain like learning disabilities. I'm like, that's great. Like I
Yeah.
don't want you to suffer what I suffered. I don't want you to have that naysaying or that sort of um putting down or belittling. And I think like that to me is like the real sign of growth, but like also
Mhm.
like I don't know, the artistic spirit of like wanting to see others grow and like not necessarily knowing where the end of that potential is.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like a lot of the times, like if we're a corrupted spirit, I feel like a lot of the times we're like, I struggled, I worked my ass off, I did like two jobs in college, and
Yeah.
I had to, struggle, and I did all this stuff. And so you have to go through that same thing in order to be successful. I'm like, that's so not true. Not that life doesn't come with struggle or strife or loneliness or
Mhm.
sickness and death and all these things that happen as a result of living, but like that like I don't know, that I feel like that mentality is so like crabs in a bucket.
Yeah.
It's just not healthy, I feel like. But not only not healthy, I feel like it's so brainwashed, like a
Yeah, it's like cyclical, I guess, in a way, like that kind of thinking, and like the only way out of that cycle is just
Mhm,
to support and to, support other people's visions. And yeah, you don't know the end result. You really don't know if,
mhm.
if you're going to be successful, quote unquote, whatever that looks like to, that looks different to different
Hard.
people, but
That's hard. That's hard.
yeah.
Hard. I guess that's a question I've been asking myself, so I want to ask you. Like,
Yeah.
I wrote this in my little notes too. I was like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But part of that question is like, yeah, what does success mean to you? What is good to you? What is enough for you? What would you feel like is like you wake up and you're like, this is sufficient. This is good for me. Like I'm living a good life. I feel fulfilled. Like, do you have a vision in mind when you think of
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's so complicated, I feel like, when it does come to film and things, because it's like my first instinct, like when I first moved here, and I think sometimes we can all get trapped in this like way of thinking.
that?
It's that pressure of like, I need to be successful because there's so much on the line, or because my family believes in me. Like, I want them to feel, like they made the right choice, like, supporting me while coming here and stuff. Um, so I have like honestly been dealing with that inner struggle recently with this new short that I'm directing, because you want it to be really good. And, you know, um, you start like thinking way in advance, like, oh, what festivals can I get into? Or like, um, down the line, like maybe this could be a feature, or you're thinking of like the future in those terms, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But I think sometimes then you get trapped in like in the hypotheticals, and you're just like putting too much stress on this one thing that you're making, that it's going to be like the thing that jumpstarts your career. Um And a lot of the times, like, realistically, that's probably not what will happen, you know? Like, realistically, a lot of people have, like, quite a few short films or quite a few things that they do before they have, like, quote, unquote, "a big break." Um, and I think that now I'm trying to go into things looking at it like short-term goals, like, still looking forward in, like, years, like, a couple years, but not so much like the 10-year thing or the 20-year thing, just because that can, like, I feel like lead to too much, like, overanalyzing, too much pressure on yourself, you know, to get to that point, and, like, if I don't get to that point, does that mean I'm a failure? So now I just kind of look at it like my goal is, like, more within the year, like, I really want this film to be good, so that my goal, for instance, for this film is I would love for it to be in the, Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival this next year. I think that that would be great, even if, you know, no matter what, like, category or anything it's in. I don't need to win, I don't need to do any of that, just, like, just to be a part of it would be really special, you know? And just to be able to go and, like, network and see, like, see what other people are doing as well. So I think, like, managing those goals into things that kind of are more achievable or more yeah, more achievable for you within, like, a year or so. That's kind of like what's the mentality that's kind of kept me going now, is not trying to think too deeply about how I'll be, like, in 20 years, like, if I'll be making a feature or not, and instead looking at, I have this one script in front of me that I'm gonna try and make really good, and hopefully, you know, the great things will come from that.
Like that.
But if yeah, but if not, it's all a learning experience, and it's all gonna make me better for a better filmmaker at the end of it, you know?
I love that. I love that. I think that's kind of where I'm at too, you know?
Mhm.
Like that can be like I don't know, that can be so frustrating, I think, for others to hear too. Like I think like our family or family expectations, like I'm with you there. It's like I feel the same way, and I literally was just having this conversation yesterday with my mom, and I said like, look, like I don't know. Like at one point in my life, I was so certain of what I was going to do and who I,
Mhm.
and then as that's changed, and I'm now in a different position, and I want to think about like making money, while doing
Mhm.
artistic endeavors, and then applying and going to school, and then having to work full time, maybe all these questions and things. I feel like it really like is so much more of like I'll put my effort in there. I'll throw the ball as hard as I can in the other side of the court, but like I can't control the outcome. I can't
Yeah.
control the outcome. I can show up, I can bang on that door, I could be like, "Let me peel it off," you know? Like, if that door doesn't wanna open, then how like yeah, exactly, like you said, if we think, like, the only way I can be happy is if that door opens, that really that's a hard ball to play because it can really set you up for disappointment, depression, and just, like, a total disillusionment of what you. And I
Yeah.
think that's the opposite of creativity in a way too, because I feel like part of creativity is resourcefulness, is realizing, okay, this door didn't open, so then how can I find a different way? If there is,
Mhm.
to figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So I think like I'm with you there. Like I'm in the same place where I'm like, okay, just this one test, this one application. That's all I'm gonna worry about.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, I'll figure it out when I get there. Or this one paper I've had open for way too long, way too many years, right? I'm just gonna focus on finishing that and doing it well. I'm not in control of how
Mhm.
it's received. I'm not in control of like you were saying, if it shows at blah blah blah, but I put in the time, I put in the effort,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I think a book too that I read recently, like this last year, that really helped me kind of refocus on that. And I think, like, a book that a lot of creatives should read if they haven't already. And it's The
Right.
Alchemist.
Yeah. Oh, I've read that one.
Yeah, that book is so great, and it is like it's like a philosophy book basically, and, like,
Uh,
as like an adventure, kind of, which was definitely down my lane when I picked it up. But I didn't expect to like connect to it so much, but I really did, especially like, of course, I'm probably misquoting it because I can't remember word for word, but it was something about like your life's dream,
yeah.
and how um if you like are pursuing something, a goal, a dream, like the whole world will conspire to for everything to fall into place eventually. And I do believe that because there are so many things that, you know, like serendipitous things that will happen at times. For instance, like my short for my first short ever. I didn't know what I was doing at all, but it's called Acid Trip. And it's about it's like a dark comedy about a girl who's in the middle of hiding a dead body, and her grandma, her abuelita, shows up and she won't leave her alone. So she's trying to like hide all the evidence while her abuelita's in the house. Um, yeah, so that film, I remember when I had made it, I was really proud that we had gotten it done, but obviously afterwards there were things that I would have changed or would have fixed now that I've grown as an artist. But a serendipitous moment with that was that it got into a film festival in Mexico City that I never thought that it would get into. Like,
So how does
grand
that happen? You would submit it, or
Yeah, you submit online your film and materials and everything. And I had submitted to a few other film festivals as well, in like Arizona, here in LA.
yeah,
Didn't get into any of them. So I was kind of at that point like, dang, okay, well, at least I tried.
yeah,
I'd kind of
yeah.
like given up like a hope on that for a while and was
Ding
moving
dong,
on to
of
the next
course.
thing.
You banged. At least you banged.
Yeah, at least I banged on the door.
Yeah.
Um, but then I got an email like randomly one day that it was accepted to this film festival, comedy film festival
Mm-hmm.
in Mexico City.
Oh,
Um, and it's a really small festival. It's called 24 risas por segundo. And yeah, it got in as part of like the foreign film category. And I went and took a trip to Mexico City for the first time with my dad, actually. It was very cute.
yeah.
um Again, like I said, my parents are very supportive, so we made a little trip out of it and went to the festival, like met some great people. But yeah, that's kind of something that it was just like a serendipitous moment, like, okay, someone did see it and think like they connected with it. And I think like that's what's most important for me as like a filmmaker. I just really want people to connect with my work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh man, that's like that in itself could be a film. About submitting a film about a girl who writes film, whose parents believe in her films, who then gets into Mexico Film Fest because she believes in Latin representation, and then goes to Mexico with her dad, who has now seen her go through the process. You know,
Yeah.
even just that little story, I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. And then you're just there and you watch it on screen in front of everyone.
Yeah, it was like a little like intimate, kind of theater space, like an indie kind of,
Oh, I
theater. Like they only have like a couple, screens in like
yeah, yeah.
the building, but
Started
yeah, it
crying.
was super cool. And then, since we were able to make a trip out of it, it was cool to like see Mexico City, being
Oh
Mexican but never having been to Mexico City. And
yeah.
my dad had never been either, so it was a new experience for both of us and just like a really fun time. Yeah.
To go. I would love to go. I have seen pictures online. I feel like it's a new place. I was actually very hip. So I like when I saw that on your Instagram, it's just so cool. So city. Actually, it's like very internationally renowned right now for some reason. I think it's like
Hmm.
a TikTok, and I think it's so like on the one hand, it's so like fetishizing and disgusting, but on the other hand, it's
Right.
true and funny in a weirdly ironic way. And it's like, it's cool to be Latina right now, don't you know, guys? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's funny, like yeah, so like Mexico City, I saw it, on the TikTok, like Instagram page. I don't know,
Hmm.
like the Explore page. I saw
Yeah.
like anthropology museum.
Mhm.
like on there, and it's just like there's like some really cool places. So I'm like, I'm jealous. I want to see like the downtown area. I want to see the restaurants, the cafes, the people, what they're like.
Yeah, it was so cool to be there, and so like
Hmm.
different to just nobody here can pronounce my name very often.
Hmm.
It's just like I don't know, it's just like a cool experience to go to like your home country pretty much, and everyone can say your name, like you everyone speaking Spanish, everyone like kind of looks like you, and it's just like a different experience to growing up in America, like it's,
Hmm.
it's pretty surreal, but I loved it. I would definitely go back in a heartbeat.
So funny. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's so like incredible, and I don't even know what to say. That's an amazing that you got to take a trip out of it, and then like I just feel like travel changes you too.
Hmm.
Whenever you get back, you're never the same. You're never the
Yeah,
you
so
see
true.
people differently after. You're like, wow, I experienced a totally different culture, totally
Hmm.
different place. I think that's why travel is so important too. Like, and another reason we were talking about this before the start of the podcast, but why funds and expendable income is so important for an artist because,
Hmm.
like, you need to know what's out there, you need to know what's possible, and you can't know that without resources. You need to be able to
Yeah.
drive and spend $400 and then another 200 on Airbnb to experience at least a few days,
Hmm.
what it is to be in a different location. What are the different possibilities for me? Is,
Yeah.
are there people that I feel more are going to fuel that creative interest and are going to support those dreams? And there's more jobs available. There's jobs I didn't even know were available, or
Hmm.
schools, universities. So it's like, I don't know. I just love that story. I love that story. I could see it. I see it in my head so visually too. But
Thanks.
I think that's something that I will die on a hill and like no, like we absolutely like it's so important to have
Yeah.
expendable income. Sorry. I'm not gonna recently, actually yesterday I was in a job interview and they were like,
Hmm.
we're just doing this from the passion of our hearts. And I was like, that's great. But you know what's in the passion of my heart is to get paid well. No, like no,
Right.
like I'm sorry, but no, I don't think so. Um,
Yeah, and just like kind of going off of that, the writer's strike and like the SAG strike that we've had for months now, I think maybe they're meeting again in like a couple days to discuss, but even that is like just shows like the systemic issue that there is not just in like Hollywood, but in our society of not paying people like a livable wage for their work. And I definitely support the writer's strike for sure. And I hope that, I do hope that they get everything that they need for the sake of, the rest of us who are just about to like jump into this like industry, and hopefully that it'll be better for it.
mhm,
Um but yeah, I think that is so true. Like, how are writers supposed to create when they can't like they can barely survive, like how are you supposed to be creative in that space
mhm.
um when
And
you're
it's
just trying to fight for like a living wage?
right. And I think the problem is that like some people have made it, right? And so then they're like, well, then that's like the perfect situation. Like your back's to the wall, and then you're forced to be creative and resourceful. But it's like, yeah, well, that I think we could definitely do. Excuse me, as like, but like, but I'm like, but the thing is, like, some people can't. Like, I always or can or can, I don't know the right way to phrase that, but I think like, yeah, it's like, I mean, why? Why there's a quote. There's a Marcus Aurelius quote, and I think this really is pertinent to what we're talking about. And it's
Hmm.
like, on the contrary, unnecessary struggle is not a virtue, it's a vice. And I think like
Mm.
it's like if you could make things better for people, why?
Why not? Yeah.
Why would you make them go through unnecessary hoops?
Yeah.
Please you? Like what's the point of that? Like for character like analysis and growth, like okay, on the one hand I could see that argumentation, but here's my like retort to that. Like there's good people that haven't necessarily had to go through that, that are genuinely humble, kind, beautiful, giving people. So I'm like,
Mhm.
necessarily think it's like just what happens to you, but how you respond, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's like, excuse me, like, no, like that's so stupid, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my argumentation for I would think like, no, like I didn't even know writers got paid so little, to be honest. I always imagine like them getting paid a lot, you know, like the South Park
Yeah.
writers or like writers for different TV shows. Like I'm like, oh, they must be like balling and like living in like the Hollywood Hills or something, but like apparently not. Apparently they are not living in a sustainable manner with a little.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with like streaming and stuff has like opened up a whole new like giant, with um uh residuals and things like that, like because streaming is not like cable, where they show it and you get paid every time they show it on cable, like a television show that you wrote, they'll show it on cable and you get like a little check for that. But on streaming, it's kind of, since everything is instant, anyone could watch, like, for instance, House of the Dragon like might have millions and millions of viewers every night, like when it premieres throughout the week, but the writers aren't seeing any of that
Oh,
money.
live rather than oh, I see what you're saying. Rather than oh, so it's because it's streaming and like rather than pre-recorded, so then every time it used to play, they would get the royalties, right? Or the avenue
Yeah.
from those fees of okay, it's playing once, twice, three. But now it's like figuring out how to pay people or corrupt systems realizing, oh, we can there's a hole here in the advanced
Yeah.
technology. So we can get away with paying them less because maybe upfront in the contracts we're gonna say like the amount of views is how you're gonna get paid rather than like um no like the
Mhm.
amount of revenue we get in regards to the amount of contribution you're putting into the project is how much you're
Mhm.
paid, you know, or based off
Yeah.
need, whether that's upfront or over time, right? So it's like
Right.
yeah, that's so sad. And I think a lot of that goes back to what we were talking about, just lack of information, not knowing.
Mhm.
Not knowing because it's like we get excited, but like this is an opportunity, you know?
Mhm.
Everything's like clout based, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is great, you know? But then it's like, well, yeah, it's great. You put it on your portfolio, you put it on your resume, but also now you're struggling for the next 6 months and maybe you're on food stamps. So like there's a
Mhm.
harsh reality of that's great. I'm going to continue to struggle forward, but also like yeah, it's like
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's kind of a hmm contentious,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I'm hoping like soon that they will have come to an agreement, I hope.
Yeah.
But it has gone on, I think, longer than everyone had anticipated, the strike, and now with the SAG strike as well. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I hope that it ends up well for the writers, and full support of them, and hope to hope to be one someday. So I guess yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Oh man. That's rough. I don't know. I don't know. Part of me is like as we talk about like entertainment and film and just art in general, it's like
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like I have this heart for like people who just don't know, like don't know better. And like even myself, like the more that I learn, the more I'm like, damn, like, we really out here getting taken advantage of, you know, in every way.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, man, like I don't even know what to say to that, you know, or I'm just like, I don't know. I want to write like essays, like argumentations,
Yeah.
like pissed, you know.
You're
But
right.
that's wonderful. I don't know. Anyway, I was gonna ask you, I guess in relation to that, we were talking about this earlier.
Mhm.
I don't know, just to expound on the previous topic, but like fundraising for your films. How
Right.
has
Yeah.
that looked like? What projects, if any, can you talk about today? If you want.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I am currently directing a film that I wrote called Made in America.
Mhm.
We're currently in pre-production right now, so we're really looking at fundraising right now and casting, and just like getting crewed up for everything. Um, well, we're thinking of shooting in November
Mhm.
as of right now, like early November. Um, yeah, so basically the story is it's for class called Making Media for Social Change. So our film should have some kind of like a social or environmental issue at its core, to try and like bring more awareness to. And, when I joined the class, I was really struggling to figure out what kind of a story I wanted to tell. Um, I knew that I wanted it to be like a Latin focused issue, maybe something having to do with immigration. But since we have seen so many of those stories, about like deportation, immigration, all of those things, I felt like I wanted to do like a different take on it. So for a while, like a couple weeks, I was just like watching the news every day on YouTube actually. Democracy Now! I definitely recommend because it's like they're just like 10-minute snippets. And I was watching the news and they mentioned about Central American like unaccompanied minors who come to the United States and ask for asylum. Um, and then they're put in like these homes a lot of times with like their sponsors. That's what they're called. Sometimes it could be a cousin, it could be like an aunt, an uncle, it could also just be someone that they don't know at all that um that their family has kind of worked out a deal that they'll stay at their house and work and like contribute and stuff. But there's been like a recent surge in child labor, particularly Central American migrants, like children working in really dangerous conditions.
In the US?
Yeah. Yeah, across the United States. There's a really great article about it that I had read after seeing that on Democracy Now! By Hannah Dreyer, I think is her name, for the New York Times. And she did like a really great and thorough investigative report about these migrant children who are working in factories, working as young as like 12 years old, like washing sheets at a hotel, in sewing factories, garment factories, uh, working like packaging Cheerios in the middle of the night, for General Mills, and working in automobile shops for General Motors, just like any kind of like manufacturing like industry you could really think of. There's like Central American children, making these products. And then the thing that was really heartbreaking about it too is, obviously this is an illegal practice. The kids are not supposed to be working, especially like those hours and those dangerous like jobs. But it benefits, of course, the big companies to have cheap labor. So the way that they go around it without getting like in trouble for it is they'll hire through like a third party agency. Um, and so they can just say like, oh, we didn't know that there were children working at this, at this facility, because we don't hire them, we just hire a third party. And so the fees that they get are very like nominal as well. Like they as much money as like they make, they can just pay those fees that for like utilizing child labor and then just continue to do it. So I was just, learning all these things very rapidly a few weeks ago, um and just being like just astounded like that this was something that was happening and something happening here. Especially, I think there's like this veil of like, oh, that stuff doesn't happen in America, like sweatshops and all of those happen in different countries, but little do a lot of people know that that is still happening here, and it's being made by children, maybe not American children, but by children who come here to seek like a better life and safety and comfort. Um, So I felt like that was like a topic I was really passionate about and wanted to explore, especially being like Mexican American and just, my grandparents came to the United States through the Arizona border. One of my great grandparents came through like the Rio Grande back in the day. So it's like I am somewhat closely tied to immigration in that, it's like a generational thing for me. But when I just read the stories of those young, children, I couldn't help but think like what it would be like if my grandparents, great grandparents hadn't migrated when they did, and just being able to see myself a little bit in those shoes and trying just being able to imagine and empathize with them and how scary it would be to be living alone, not only in the United States, living alone, not having like family or parents to rely on, but then also like trying to go to school, learn English as a second language, and also work like at the factory in the middle of the night. Um yeah, it was just like heartbreaking to me, and I really wanted to like put a face and a voice to those stories, and hopefully like that's what this short film will do, um is like bring more like awareness to this issue that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, in a way that hopefully people can connect with, since it's like a narrative, short. So the log line is about, it's when two migrant workers, young girls, working at a factory together, one of them goes missing, one is like seeks to uncover the truth of her disappearance. So that's kind of the log line for it.
Wait, what's the name again? Sorry.
It's called Made in America.
Made in America. Okay. Okay. Made in America. Okay. So that's like the general synopsis, and it was based off the inspiration of, I guess, I don't know if inspiration is the right word, the enragement of finding out maybe what happened or what is
Mm-hmm.
happening
What is happening? Yeah.
currently here in the United States. And so you're making a short film
Mm-hmm.
about
Yes. That
it.
focuses from like that teenage, girl perspective of trying to navigate like still being a teenager, becoming a woman, wanting to still have like those childlike uh tendencies, but also having to grow up super quickly because they have no other choice. And so yeah, it's really about that issue, and about like the exploitation of migrant children for cheap labor in the United States. And really the title Made in America kind of came from directly from that article that I was mentioning that Hannah Dreier wrote, when she mentions that there were kids, young girls in Los Angeles actually sewing Made in America tags onto J. Crew shirts. And that image just like really stuck with me, especially the rhetoric that we always hear about, you want things that are made in America because America's great, and we don't want, like I feel like that's very conservative rhetoric that we hear a lot, like of trying to push for things that are like made in America by Americans or whatever. But the truth of it is that all of these things that are quote unquote made in America and that keep Americans clothed, running, fed, all those things are due to migrant labor, and some of which is children. Yeah.
I think I've heard an overarching theme in our dialogue today of like vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability and where that can lead you. And that's almost like the biggest horror film in itself, I feel like, is like not knowing what's going to happen to you as a result of being vulnerable. And then like,
Mm-hmm.
what the irony of the whole thing is like if you like you study human psychology and you like look at how we treat people based off of how we perceive them or how we perceive
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, it's like sometimes the only way to make it out of your situation is to act like you're not vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
and to like somehow convince yourself that you're going to get out of the situation,
Yeah.
putting yourself in the hero's narrative, right?
Right.
And so then it's like, I don't know, it's just like so, I don't know. I keep hearing it as we talk. I'm like, oh, like there's this common theme, of like
Mm-hmm.
constant vulnerability in the journey to either like trying to achieve something or
Mm-hmm.
in situations where there's kind of, I don't know, like a blocking off, some sort of unfairness, some sort of injustice, some sort of corruption, right? And
Right.
it's like there's this corruption, there's this taking advantage of the vulnerable because they can,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah. But it's beautiful that you're able to then go back and say, well, then if, you know, and this is the question I think like we all have to ask ourselves, given our own capacities, like, what can we do? And then, like, for you, it's like,
Yeah.
make a short film, and I'm going to illustrate this and then see what happens as a result.
Yeah.
But that's heavy.
It is. It is. It's a heavy film for sure. But I'm really passionate about telling it, and I think that we have like a really great team that we're starting to build, and so we're still looking for some crew.
Mhm.
And again, we shoot in like November.
Mhm.
We're also are working on the fundraising page, which was your original question.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the fundraising. So
Yeah.
you start the GoFundMe and then you post it everywhere and then you share it and you say like this is the project I'm working on, or do you apply for certain funds, or like what exactly is
Mhm.
entailed in that?
Yeah, so there's actually a few websites that people use for funding. I think one of the primary ones is Seed and Spark, I think has like recently got quite popular. One of the reasons is because I think it's like if you meet 80% of your goal, then you get to keep all the money. But you do have to meet at least 80%. And all of these like fundraising sites kind of have these kind of rules, like you have to meet like a certain amount of your goal to get
Right.
the money.
Mhm.
um but I think Seed and Spark doesn't take any like percentage of that, so that's the one that a lot of people have been using. Another one is Indiegogo. um I'm not like super familiar with that platform, but we'll be putting ours up on Seed and Spark. If anyone's interested in looking at it for more information, you can just search the name of the film, Made in America, and it should come up. We're still like putting all the materials together right now, but basically what you want to do for fundraising is you want to have like a pitch video that's maybe like 2 minutes or less, honestly, is better, I think, in my opinion, just because people, attention spans and stuff, you don't want to ramble for too long. Um, and then you have just like a little, section where you write what the story is, what kind of tone and any kind of like supplemental materials you think people would be interested in seeing. If you have like shots that you think would be cool to do, or like a little, one thing that I've been experimenting with recently is AI and Midjourney. Not necessarily for like building promotional like end product things, because I think there's like an ethical argument there with art, but for just like a way for me to communicate what I'm seeing, like vision wise, so someone else can see it and be like, oh, okay, I kind of get what you mean. So I think it definitely has its purposes, but I think having images and having a little bit of what the story is going to be is important on that page. And then on that page as well, they have a list of incentives. So it's like if you donate $10, you get a sticker or something. If you donate $50, you get a little like gift package thing. So right now we're really building those incentives out, and we really want the incentives to be something that people want, that people are going to like cherish and want a piece of the film. So something kind of exciting that I can mention now is that we'll be having one of the incentives for the higher tiers
Mhm.
will be a custom shirt that has like a patch of the film logo on it that's directly emulates the costumes that the two protagonists will be wearing in the film. Since then in the film they're working at a sewing factory. We thought it would be cool if they kind of had like a little costume, a little uniform that they wear and kind of personalized since they're teenage girls. So we want to do the same thing and have like it'll be a navy shirt, like a work shirt with a patch on the pocket that says Made in America. And then we are offering to do custom embroidery on the like collar with people's names if they choose to. So I think it's like a super fun incentive. I'm really excited about like being able to offer that, and I hope that people will be excited about it too. Just like have a little piece of the film, and also a cute shirt that you'll probably want to wear later,
Explain it to
Um
people if they see you with it. They're like, "What's that shirt?" You can be like, "What?"
yeah, yeah, exactly. So since it is like so focused on the garment industry, I thought it would be cool to have some kind of, garment to showcase. Yeah, so we're still getting all those materials up, but are hoping to get them up this weekend. And yeah, I'll share the link and everything with you so you can have it as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's been the one like really wonderful slash beautiful thing about starting this podcast is like being able to support other artists, you know? And
Yeah.
I don't know, this has been like a really crazy learning experience for me too, as
Uh-huh.
going through this and like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know that this was out there, but also like I didn't know like okay, there's this weird thing that I've been learning recently. Like, I don't know if this is something that you've also kind of discovered now that we're supposed to be adults. Like, okay, like I always, because like I'm struggling in my own ways, right? And I'm like, I feel so little, like in the world. I'm not
hmm
powerful, I'm not rich, But then,
Yeah.
like, you come into instances like this, right? Or like you come into instances where you get together with different people, and then like I feel like you realize, at least for me, I'm realizing like how much you can help other people
hmm
in ways without even necessarily needing to expand your capacity or expand
Yeah.
energy. And you're like, what? Like, what is that? Like,
Yeah.
no, like, is that what being an adult is like? Like, realize wait, like, but I can like that we all can help each other. What the is
Right.
that? That's so weird.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that's
I
been
think
like, the one thing that I've been like, what? Like,
yeah, and I think that sense of community is
mhm,
like so important, and especially I think being here in LA and just being in filmmaking, like the Latino community that's within filmmaking is so awesome. Like everyone is very supportive. Everyone that I've come across, um, we all want to help each other, which is like a great thing to be a part of, I think. Because we know how hard it is. We know how hard it is to get stuff made.
yeah,
Um, how hard it is as Latinos to actually be represented on screen, but also represented like behind the screen as well. Because I think the representation behind is even worse than in front
no,
of the camera. So I think we're all like fighting for each other, and um that's really where I get most excited about fundraising and about just making things, is being able to find like other Latino creatives who can see this and read it and be like, I connect with this story and I want to help make it happen, and that they can bring a perspective too, that to me, that things that I might not even have thought of that will just enhance the story, I think. So I think that finding your people is super important and useful whenever you're like moving into like this kind of an industry.
I mean, I think like I was gonna ask you about that too. It's like I don't know, like yeah, it does seem like you guys have like a small community that you support each other and are like so helpful, and it's just like I don't know, like, I guess if you could talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like I don't even know, like, fully what you're talking about, you know?
Mhm.
And also, like, I don't know, like, I think everyone's mental schema on this is just like it's a dog eat dog world. And
Mhm.
then, like, I guess, like, from getting to know you and Aaron, like, I see, like, you're kind of your circle a little bit, you know? Like,
Mhm.
what is going on? Like, there's people supporting each other, helping each other, or there's like people out here like trying to get fundraising or like
Mhm.
trying to put out scholarship information or trying to put out fun application or like
Mhm.
competitions, and you're just like, okay, like it's a different world. Like, how do people, like, how do people access this world? Like, do you apply to the school? Do you just move to the area? Do you connect online? Like, how did you find it? I guess is the better question.
Yeah, I think the way that I found it was through USC for sure, just because coming from Tucson, Arizona, like there was no one really who was doing film
Mhm.
in that way or doing anything really like remotely close to like kind of what I was doing. So I think moving to LA was definitely a big thing, but USC big part of that. Access to people that are like probably around the same age as you, um, who like the same things as you. You know, they love film, they want to make films, and just like having the access to those people, I think, is the main thing. But also just finding your people within those people, you know, because
Right.
there is like, you know, there's a lot of people who go to USC, and a lot of people in the program, but I think naturally you might just like gravitate toward the people who kind of get what you're doing and you kind of get what they're trying to do. Um, a lot of times it's like you'll see a screening, you'll go to a screening or something and people will show their shorts or when we were doing shorts for class, you know, we would watch them in class. And that's when you can kind of see like people's personalities come through and see like kind of what they're all about, what kind of stories they like to tell, and if they match up with yours, you just kind of, you know, naturally gravitate toward each other in that way. There's always like new people coming out that I'm like meeting, you know, even in the cohorts below us that I'm like, oh, hey, like I really liked your stuff, and you know, now we're in close contact. So I think, yeah, it's nice in a way to have that. That is the one thing at USC I will say is the best part of it, is having other colleagues and students who want it just as bad as you and are passionate about it just as bad as you, and finding them and making things together because they're going to be the ones who support you the most, I think.
Right. And I think that's the energy that can carry forward. I think like as that's yeah, I could like feel that if that makes sense. But I think like I don't know, like I guess I'm still learning this, and out of curiosity, maybe other people have the same kind of, or maybe you're even answering this question and you're still kind of pondering it. But like, okay, like, and I lived in LA. I feel like it's so hard to tell. Like, I'll go into a conversation with someone sometimes, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, we want the same things. We're both entrepreneurial minded. They love philosophy. They're educated. You know, we want to grow together. But then you realize, like, they're just trying to use you, or like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a phase, or like, you know, so it's just like finding people who are very real about what they do and genuine and like caring and kind. I feel like it's so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like how did even distinguish like between like, you know, someone who I guess is genuinely interested in what you're doing and cares, and
Mm-hmm.
someone who's just like, you know, this is just a pathway forward for me, and as soon as I'm done with what I need from you, I'm moving forward in a different direction, you know?
Right, yeah.
I don't even know. Like that's the question, because I feel like oftentimes that holds us back too, is encountering the wrong people, because they can really taint our soul and our mental
Yeah.
stamina and our sense of self and the perseverance, you know? So,
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. I think one of the things that USC does is when they pair us all up together like randomly
mhm.
to make three short films in our second semester, and I was lucky that I had like a good trio, but I think from seeing people's films and USC is kind of siloed in that people do talk to one another a lot. There's everyone's like in constant communication because we all have classes together. So if there's someone who kind of built a reputation for themselves for being difficult to work with or inconsiderate, or they never show up, or they show up for their stuff but they don't show up for you, those things do kind of go around in a way, and in a way it's bad, and in some cases it's like, if especially if like that person, it's scary because it's like, if I make a mistake, is everyone gonna then know about it? But also in a way it's good too, because it's like you can kind of tell who you might want to work with, or who, and sometimes there's someone that you think you might want to work with and you start working with them and you're like, oh, maybe they're not like the best fit. um but I think a lot of it, yeah, is just like kind of talking to your colleagues and seeing what they think of other people, like those that you do have that you trust, like if you have like a handful of people that you really respect their opinion, and then you ask them, hey, what do you think of this? And I think that's pretty close to how it is in the actual industry as well. Everything's like word of mouth kind of. Like, oh, I have this project, who do you think would be good for it? And then someone will give you a rec. uh
Rather
but
than
yeah,
going to.
yeah. So I think finding like those couple people that you can really like, that you just really naturally connect with and can tell that you maybe like have similar interests or similar backgrounds or belief systems to kind of rely on for like second opinion on things is really useful. But a lot of it is just trial and error as well. Like you just, sometimes you have to work with people, and um since we're all kind of like working on the same projects together too, we're all like mingling. And then you might see like, oh, okay, I respect you, I like your work, but we probably don't match personalities, and that's okay. But yeah, so it is kind of like a running, like challenge, I guess, when you meet new people and stuff, to kind of figure that out. But the people who care about you will always be there for you, I think. And it's the people who show up for you in your time of need that make you really realize like, oh, okay, these are like true collaborators, true friends. So yeah.
I like that. I like that. I think it's like, yeah, learning from others, trusting, getting a feeling for who you can trust and kind of basing that off of, that's a lot though too. Like it's still a lot of risk, based off of, if I invest this time and emotion into valuing these people's opinions, it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
falls, a lot of risks you're taking, right? Um, uncertainty. And I think like, yeah, I think like that's the one thing, that's the run in that I always like. It's like, can't figure this out, like when I was there, I'd be like, oh yeah, like this person's great, and then you're like, oh no, like whoa,
Yeah.
situation, you're just like, and oh no, and they have
Yeah.
5 girlfriends or something like that. It's like super dramatic. You end up realizing like, and this person was just using me, right? So
Right.
like, yeah, I think I think that's good to know, and I think like, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but that's
Yeah.
cool. So friends, the process of getting into USC, some of your films, projects, and then family background, culture. We talked about dreams and aspirations. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else I didn't ask you that I have been just dying to know? um,
Let me think. I think we talked about the festival, we talked about the film.
mhm. Oh, do you want to talk a little bit? I guess I had 2 more questions come to mind. Did you want to talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the film that you submitted that got you into the program?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the film that got me into the program, sorry, or the festival.
The program, the
The
program.
program.
I think the festival was Acid Trip, right? That's
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
yeah. We talked a little bit about that. Um,
Yeah.
if you want to talk about the film, I think you said, was in journalism, right? That you
Hmm.
applied. Do you want to talk a little bit about that at all?
Yeah, yeah. So the film that I applied to USC with was a documentary that I had made in my undergraduate like degree. And it was very, it was taken on like a DSLR. It wasn't fancy at all. It was just like kind of a learning exercise really at that time. I was probably like 20 years old when I had filmed it or something. But it's about homeless youth in Tucson. There's like a program in Tucson called Youth on Their Own, which is a really great program that kind of helps homeless teens, find housing. It helps them, it gives them like stipends, so they can focus on school instead of worrying, kind of similarly like having to do with um, like not having to worry about working, full-time jobs to support themselves. They can have that support so they can go to school, graduate, and maybe go to college. Um, and so the short documentary is about just told from the perspective of one of these girls who I actually know and is used to be like a really close friend of mine named Hannah, and her experience with homelessness and as a teenager, and kind of like how that happened and how it affected her, and how Youth on Their Own really helped her kind of get back on track. So yeah, this film was it was just a little short documentary for class, but it won like a award at U of A for like best doc at the time, which was again a huge surprise. So we're talking about like serendipity in that way. That was like one of those moments.
I'm gonna write this.
Yeah.
I know serendipity the word, but I now that you've come to talk about it today in regards to The Alchemist as well, I'm like, I'm gonna keep this on my notepad. Serendipity
Yeah.
on the tip of my tongue. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great word. Yeah, so that's kind of what the film was about. I think I also had submitted a couple other docs. One of them was about a blind music teacher in Tucson as well. And just like how she ran her classroom. It was just kind of like a fun, little piece spotlighting her. So yeah, they were very basic. They weren't like super cinematic, so to speak. They didn't have like the best, I didn't have the best equipment. And for all of the docs that I submitted, it was just me, like just me and a camera, doing the interviews and filming. Whereas like now at USC, it's such a big, everything's such a big production, like there's like 10 people typically on set. So yeah, I mean, I would encourage people if they really want to apply to a film school or to USC in particular to just, submit what you have. And I think they're not looking for perfection or anything, because then why would you want to come to school, like if
You
as
don't
like
need to be there,
yeah,
right?
you wouldn't need to be there, right? So as long as I think the most important thing is know how to tell a story and like are an interesting storyteller with an interesting perspective or a different perspective or way of seeing things that hasn't been explored. I think that's really what they value most. But yeah, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I don't think for portfolios or for short films. As long as the story is there, that's really all that matters. Yeah.
So did you film yourself too on a tripod? Were you
I
document?
think for the application,
Yeah. Did you film yourself? You were like,
I
you put it down. You like ran. You're like,
yeah, yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, we had to, so all the actual films in my portfolio were documentaries, so I was just behind the camera, but I do think we had to film like a little intro of ourselves and
Oh,
put like,
okay.
like to see our face. That was thankfully only like 30 seconds or
Yeah.
something though, so it wasn't too
Okay, cool.
excruciating, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. As part of me, like, imagine this process where it's like you film, direct, and act in it. Camera down, like,
I
edit.
mean, you could. I'm sure that there's people who have done that.
It's just like a one person dialogue the entire thing.
Yeah.
That was kind of iconic. I feel like that would maybe go into the comedy section or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. I would bet that would get in, honestly.
Like, what the fuck? Oh god. Yeah. Oh, man. There's other questions. Two other questions that come to mind before I have to let you go.
Mhm.
Is I think so. One, I'm like I want to save the fun question for last. I feel like
Okay.
so. Let's do another pragmatic question. We love that. But I was gonna say, so being in this program, and then not necessarily knowing for sure, like I have this job set up right after, so it's not like finance, okay?
Mhm.
Like, right? So,
Mhm.
um, knowing that, I think has like I'm curious, like has it pushed you or others in the program to be more entrepreneurial, like to be the first ones to reach out to programs, to things, to people in order to kind of ensure your success or to kind of ensure your survival? Like, how does the artistic with the like kind of just like business side of film
Mhm.
kind of come out in, I guess, especially situations towards the end of graduation? Because I guess towards the beginning, you can kind of be like, okay, maybe I have this much in scholarship or tuition or loans that covers my living plus maybe
Mhm.
going to school. So maybe I don't have to have a job during that time period. Maybe you do.
Right.
Depends on your situation, cost of living, all that stuff, your standards, right? Um,
Mhm.
so I guess yeah, I don't know. I guess that's been a big curiosity for me, like if it pushes that side of you, if that's even a side that like you're curious about or that you have found. I guess you did talk to me a little bit about the writing part of that. But yeah, like anything where you're like, I'm gonna start my own production company or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely know some people at USC who have graduated and started their own little like, videography company, especially if they have like the equipment already.
Mhm.
Um, or their little production companies as well. I right now am not I don't feel yet like I'm at a place where I know yet like enough to do like a production company or something in that way. But I know that in that sense, there's always people coming sometimes to USC, to visit in classes like speakers and stuff. And I know a lot of people have gotten like jobs or internships through just showing your face and not being scared to like go up and introduce yourself and say like this is what I'm interested in. And then a lot of times you'll be surprised like how many people who come to campus or like even professors are so willing to like share their contact info and to help out. Most people are, especially as a student. I think you have like this um kind of shield on, so to speak, where you can just be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'm just a student," like if someone's like, why would you approach me?" If they're like super fancy or something, it's like, I'm
Right.
just a student looking for information. So I
Yeah.
think it for people who are in film school, I
Mhm.
think utilizing that student kind of aspect is to their benefit for sure. And just, yeah, not being afraid to go up to people and say that you appreciate their work. And most times, like probably 9 times out of 10, like they're going to be cool and they're going to be willing to help or be interested in what you have to say. So,
Mhm.
yeah, just not being afraid to put yourself out there, I think at the end of the day is how anyone who wants to be in this industry has to kind of have that drive, that mentality to just not be afraid. And even though even though they might think I'm silly or behind the scenes or think like, oh, that my idea was not good, but you will never know unless you put it out there because someone might hear your idea and be like, that's great. I want to work with you on that. So, yeah.
It's a very like go-getter mentality, like very like entrepreneur. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, oh man, like not being afraid of rejection. And there's just like so
Hmm.
much rejection that comes with doing
Yes.
anything, you know?
Exactly. Like
Making
knowing that that will come and learning to be okay with it and knowing it's not really a reflection of you always. It's just it's just a lot of people trying to do the same thing. So it's just competitive is all. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's intense. I guess the other question, I feel like there's always more, but I guess the one that I kind of saw on your profile that maybe other people are interested in too is like you have an interest in magical realism.
Hmm.
So I saw that, and then I saw that you went to like the Guillermo, I think they're Toro talk, right? So
Yeah.
I think he's really into that too, that like
Yeah.
realism, Pan's Labyrinth kind of situation where you're telling a story through supernatural means, you know?
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I kind of am attracted to magical realism, and it all kind of goes back to, being a kid and being into like high fantasy,
Hmm.
Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, those things, and not like feeling represented or not really seeing like much diversity in those kinds of roles, which I know like a lot of times, for instance, like Star Wars, like they're getting a lot better with representation. A lot of these big franchises are getting better for sure. But like growing up, not having really that kind of representation on screen. And I've always been drawn to the magical side of things, I think, because growing up sometimes I had like a little bit of a rough childhood. And I think the way for me to like escape some of those maybe like issues was to write and to write like fantasy things, because that's like a whole new world, like full of any possibilities. And I was always just kind of attracted to that and attracted to like the hero's journey, like that kind of trope of like someone who finds themselves, finds their strength, like saves the world, all those things. And I think magical realism is kind of like a blend of that kind of fantasy with like more real life issues like immigration, or and Guillermo del Toro's film like Pan's Labyrinth, it's like the Spanish Civil War, like exploring these very real issues with like a magical twist. I think it's just like so interesting to me, and I think that that's really who I discovered it through, was Guillermo del Toro. um yeah, and so I would like to explore that more. Right now magical stuff is expensive to
Oh,
produce, like to make
yes.
a film with.
Yes. Oh, of course. It's like $40 for like three markers.
Yeah, yeah.
Like for three Posca pens that are like nice colors and thick. It's like $30, you know. So of
Right.
course, can't even imagine those
Like
markers
special effects. Yeah.
plus like posters, not even special effects on top of that. Like, of
Yeah.
course, it's expensive. Like
Yeah. Yeah. So
production.
eventually I think it is something that I would want to like explore. I actually have a feature that I wrote in my feature writing class called Matamoros. It's like kind of a play on like the actual place, but also morros, like kids, like slang for kids. So it's like kind of horror, kind of magical realism about three kids growing up in like the Yucatan jungle, when their like animals start showing up disemboweled, and they're trying to solve this mystery, and they
Oh,
think
wow.
it's the bruja, of course, like the lady who lives in like the jungle, super weird. But eventually they come to realize that the truth is much more heinous than what their little kid minds could like comprehend, so in a weird way also kind of tying within the same themes of like trying to uncover a truth, um as with like Made in America, the short that I'm producing. So
I noticed about you and Aaron actually is that there's a lot of philosophical like topics.
mhm.
I say this because I'm a philosophy background. So
Yeah.
like you say uncovering a truth. Like that's like if you think of any philosophy book, you want to start with the greats, right? If you think about
Mhm.
Socrates, Plato, all these people, that's what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
reading these books and you're like, okay, they're trying to uncover things about the human condition,
Yeah.
right? And so that's like so fascinating to me coming from that background. When I hear you talk, I'm like, wow, this is like so much of that, but also just in a visual way. If that makes
Mhm.
like how to encapsulate that same search, but
Yeah.
instead of the reading and writing and analysis, it's a visual format.
Mhm.
I just punched myself of like yeah, that's so fascinating, and I'm a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, I love him. He's so
Love,
great.
love. Every time he talks too, I'm just like, oh, I'm so drawn in, you know.
Yeah, he
But
is.
yeah, no, that's a lot. I don't know what to say to all that because it's so heavy. But I definitely, yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I'm also just so intrigued by that world and
Yeah, and I think I've recently come to like the realization that I'm very intrigued with exploring like children and like how
uh,
especially children who have to grow up like pretty quickly and like how to navigate like still being a child while having like very adult responsibilities. And that's like evident in the feature and then the short that I'm directing. And I definitely think a part of it is because I feel a little bit like when I grew up like as a young, like Chicana girl, that sometimes we do have to grow up fast, especially as Latina, like as women.
yeah,
There's like this expectation a little bit of like to be providers, like to take care of everyone else. I think like that's very like rampant in our culture as women, as Latina women, like take care of the men, take care of, all the issues and like you should have everything together in a way.
mm,
Um and so yeah, I think like maybe that is kind of a theme that kind of has been coming up a lot because I do relate to that experience as like a Latina woman of having to grow up quickly as a child while also still trying to like maintain a sense of, we're still kids and we
wonder.
still are still trying to figure out ourselves and our
Still trying to
our
figure.
bodies, our wants, our desires, all of those things. Yeah, so
That's
kind of
so
what I've been
fascinating.
about.
That's so fascinating, and it's something I'm learning too is like if you don't have that time properly in childhood to discover,
Hmm.
to wonder, to fantasize, to self-discover, to like if you don't have that correct play time, because play is so important to the development
Hmm.
process. Play and fantasy, like you
Hmm.
then you get the what and this is what I feel like I'm going through. But like you go through what is that one movie? Arrested Development
Uh-huh.
later because then it comes out. You're like, shit, who the heck am I? You know,
Yeah.
what is this world? And that's when the fantasy and the wonder and the imagination come out. And I really believe that that's what it is that
Yeah.
you didn't have the opportunity to do it in childhood. It comes out later. It will come out at some point.
Right.
Literally, some people, when they're 80 and 90, they hit that point, where they're like, I
Uh-huh.
spent my whole life surviving, not knowing who I am without any sense of wonder or imagination or self discovery. Like that, that scene in Pan's Labyrinth when she climbs into the like underground
Hmm.
ring? What is it? Where she sees
The
the
like well
fawn?
thingy.
Yeah, the
I don't know
fawn
if it's
who
a
comes
well, but
out
it's
and
like
he introduces himself and he's
yeah.
um,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, that like that sense of wonder where she's really meeting then I believe her subconscious, imagine
Yeah.
of like potential and who she is as a person because she's in such a dire circumstance.
Yeah, that escape a little bit from her reality, I think is something that I resonate with as well. Yeah.
It protects you. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That is the one thing I would say would probably be to that we probably had to our advantage is if you're a naturally creative mind, I think your brain goes to that already when you're going through struggles. So like if you are in a family that you feel so displaced from, or you're going through
Mhm.
yelling, screaming, or work, whatever situation, I think your mind probably, when you're a little bit more creative, goes directly to like a different sort of,
Yeah.
I'm going to interpret this in a way to almost protect myself. And then you go through like
Yeah.
storytelling sort of perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's interesting. Oh, that's so
It is interesting, and I'm glad that you can relate, and I hope like a lot of other Latina women especially, I think, can relate to that kind of feeling and desire.
I think a lot of them, to be honest with you, as we're like coming to, I know you have to go at 12:30, so as we're
Hmm.
coming to the end of our time, I think a lot of them, from the ones I have met, my age or younger or older, like Thea's, I think a lot of them are not going to come into it until later, until they
Mm.
realize, like, I've spent a lifetime without actually playing. What does
Yeah.
that mean? What does
Or
that
or like dreaming and like striving. I don't know. Like,
mean?
yeah, I want Latinas to watch my films and feel like, damn, I could do that, or I'm powerful, or I'm the protagonist of my own life and my story too, and I'm in control of that. I think like we just don't, yeah, we don't see that much, and you can't become something that you don't see,
Mhm.
ever. So,
Exactly. Or at least your mental schema, sometimes it limits you, and others
mhm.
put that limit on you because they're like, what? What do you want? What are you talking about? They have
Yeah.
attitude of, okay, then give me a specific. And it's like, I can't. I can only tell you that I love this. And it's just that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that, for me, that word stays in my mind, play. It's like you
Mhm.
go through your whole life to realize you haven't played. While play and leisurely times and activities seem stupid, I absolutely believe they are fundamental to our development. It's like
Yeah.
play, like you see children play outside, and you see their personalities come out the most.
Mhm.
Emotional regulation, what they're interested in, and like what they discover they hate, which is equally as important to figuring out what you do like. So it's like, yeah, taking those risks and like, I don't know,
Mhm.
it's so funny. I agree with you that the older I get, the more fascination I get with little kids and realizing like, wow, like especially healthy little kids too. I know you said you have a
Yeah.
fascination with kids that struggle, but for me,
Uh-huh.
it's healthy ones because I'm like, wow, they're being encouraged right now to
Uh-huh.
play, to fail, to learn, and to incorporate with who they are naturally within the schema of the world and other people and other children their age and adults.
Mhm.
And like, so that's been fascinating to me too, is to see healthy children that
Yeah.
are playing all the time, and you're like, what is this world? Because I was
Yeah.
not introduced to that. Like you said, the expectation was that you have to be well behaved, that you have to be well performing, whether that's in school or in a sport or
Mhm.
something, where a healthy child in a healthy, loving environment, I feel like is so much coached to be like, yeah, like go try it. Like go,
Mhm.
yeah, or like, yeah, or like they feel safe to, oh, there was this quote I posted on my Instagram story, and it was like, quiet children are actually the ones that you have to look out for, like in the world, like later, historically speaking,
Mhm.
because there were, and like it was such a vague quote, right? It was like from some philosopher, some person, some political person, and it was like, those are actually very dangerous children. And sometimes, and the reason is because they have not been allowed to play, they haven't been allowed to fail, they don't feel safe to cry, they don't feel safe to scream, they don't feel safe to fall, break their arm, like
Mhm.
those things are so important.
Yeah.
Like now, like when I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, they feel safe to do those things. Not that you don't need discipline, but it's also like they're so in that self-discovery process. They're learning, like their limits,
Yeah.
like, and others' limitations too.
Mhm.
So I'm with you there. I'm with you there 100%. And thank you so much
Yeah.
for talking to me. Is there
Of
any
course.
like links or plugs you want to plug before?
You can follow me on Instagram. Now more active on it. It's at Maritza L Cruz. And you spell my name Maritza.
Great.
In
It's great.
case
I'll
people.
I'll link everything below too. If there's anything you want to share with me, I'll just put it on the description.
Yeah, and you can, on my Instagram, I'll be posting more about the film. And you'll be able to find links and stuff there if you want to share. It's much appreciated. Even if, even if you don't have money to donate, that's totally fine. Just sharing it to your page or to your story is just enough for
Yeah.
sure. So
Yeah.
anything is appreciated.
Go ahead and I'll make sure to stay on track and, you know, thank you for talking with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's been so great. It's great to see like your face too, put a face to the name and all.
It's so scary to put a face to the name, you know? I feel like I hide. So like I'll come out of hiding and then I'll come out of hiding. Like I'll post something and I'm like, no. Oh. So it's but I like to keep that air of mystery.
Yeah.
Feel like for me, the podcast is gonna be the only consistent place that I show up. But in like art or like my personal Instagram, I feel like I don't know why I really enjoy playing on that like peekaboo.
Yeah.
But here I am. But here I'm
Yeah.
recreation. Like I don't know. It's just fun for me
Yeah.
to like do that sort of process all the time, you know? So
Hmm.
but yeah, it's great meeting you and
Yeah, great meeting you.
no, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever see you or meet you, but hopefully I will, you know.
Yeah, we'll stay in contact for sure. And if you ever come to LA, like I'm here, Aaron's here. We would love, I'm sure both of us would love to take you out, like just to
It sounds so fun. I'll definitely let you know if I'm ever in town or like, hey, an idea or something.
yeah.
I'll let you know and we'll just take it from there. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And I know you have something at 12:30, so I'm gonna let
Uh-huh.
you go.
Of course.
Do more tea, a little snack or something because I know I'm
Yeah.
hungry too. I'm ready actually right now. I just had
Right.
so all right. Well, it was nice talking to you. I'm gonna end
Yeah.
the recording right now before you get off.